Welcome back, everybody. It is Bar Run Forge here with another Monday morning tool video. Today we are going to be working on a top fuller, so stay tuned.
Okay, so to make our top fuller, we're going to be using this piece of 4140, which is 3 inches long or 76 millimeters by 1 3/4 square, which is 44.5 millimeters. This is the size material we are going to use. All right, so the process is the first time we'll go through and we will punch the hole with our hammer eye punch, same as we would with a hammer. Once we get that plug all the way out, we get that drifted all the way through, then we'll put the hammer eye drift in and we'll drift it out so we can get a handle inside that. And then we'll start working out the cheeks, spreading those out, and then we'll also work on the head or the striking end, and then work down to the fuller. One easy. One easy. Okay, good. One. Okay, grab. Grab. Okay. Roll. Yep. Yeah. 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 Yep. Get that flip. Ooh. Yeah. Yeah. Now that the hole is punched, we'll start to work and fuller and flatten out the cheeks so we can spread those out really nice. Like that.
Yeah, that's a better shot anyway.
All right, as we're working down the struck end of the tool, you can see it gets a little bit of a inverted mushroom, so to speak. So what we're going to do is heat it up. We'll get the flatter. We'll put the flatter on the edge of this, on the face, and then we'll get it down in the swedge block and try to keep everything from being deformed. We'll be using the hammer eye drift as well. Everything else we're going to do on this end is going to be done with a grinder and just kind of smoothing things up. But this end, we're going to start making the fuller, actually start drawing that material out. And one of the ways we'll do that is with a flatter on an angle. And this is a little challenge. With the initial grinding, or pretty much the grinding that's going to go on, without just putting a little bit of finish on, we are ready to go into the heat treatment process. This is 4140. We're going to heat it up to a critical temperature. We've already normalized it, so now we're ready. We're ready to bring it up to a critical temperature, and then we'll quench it. When we bring it out, have it quenched, then we'll put it in a tempering cycle. Now, while we're waiting for that to come up to heat, I'm actually doing this very slowly. I've got the fan turned all the way down and the gate valve for the air choked all the way down. And I'm constantly rotating the piece to try to get as much of an even heat as possible all the way through the material. And then we'll bring it over to the quench. It's got to get above magnetic in a little bit. It's going to be on a rising heat before we put it in the quench. So the hardening is done. We have a hard tool right now. And so now all we have to do is put this in a heat treat oven. For us, that's going to be a toaster oven. And give it a little bit of tempering. And then we'll be ready to put a handle on it. Our fuller is complete. Here it is. This is our top fuller. And this is actually the first one that Eli and I have done. Now, we've kind of done a hammer all by ourselves. And this is similar to that. But it's kind of our first go around, and we're not totally displeased with it. We're kind of happy with it, and it does what it's supposed to do. For example, when you're doing hammers or something like that, this goes right down in there, and that, especially even on this hammer, is a pretty good fit. So I'm pretty happy with that. Now we'll have to do a bottom fuller so that it matches the imprint or the indentation that it's going to make. But I handled it up. I did not wedge this. A lot of the top tools do not get wedged because we want them to not have so much tension on them. They get struck really hard, and they do have a tendency to shatter or break right there. So if we relieve that tension, yes, there's a possibility the head can come off of there, but that's a whole lot better than it kind of shattering and having to rehandle it and all kinds of other problems. But anyway, pretty happy with that. The top fuller. Great tool in the shop, and it's a much needed tool in the shop because we're about to start doing things like hammers and other things that require fullering into our work. And then we have to think about how a tool like this applies to our lives, especially biblically. And I'm going to use a verse that we're all probably pretty familiar with. It's Psalm 23, and the psalmist writes so many things about God's presence in our lives. And one of the things he says is, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. This is the great thing about God. You know, hell isn't hell because of pointy ears and a pitchfork and a sharp tail and a guy that looks red or whatever we've got the vision of. That's not why hell is hell. And heaven is not heaven because of pearly gates and walls of jasper and streets of gold and things like that. You see, hell is hell because God is not there. And heaven is because that's where God is. And the psalmist understood that even though he walks through the valley of the shadow of death, right down in there and then below. Think about, just for a moment, the valley of the shadow of death. So not only is there a shadow, there is a valley. There's a lower spot than the shadow where there's no light. Understand that even in the valley of the darkest place in our lives, God's presence is what gives us comfort. We don't have to fear because God is there. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, and we're taking a pounding, we're down in the bottom there, I don't fear anything because God is with me. So that's why we can have that confidence. We can have that fear That's why the psalmist writes that even though he walked through the darkest place in his life, he will fear no evil because God is with him. Thank you guys so much for joining in. We had such a great time making this together. Eli and I did. And it's going to be a great tool to use here in the shop. God bless you all, and we'll see you on the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.
This is like a telegram. Beep, 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 beep. Stop. That was good.